Mute.
On behalf of the Wilkins family and First Congregational Church, Williamstown, United Church of Christ, welcome to this service of Thanksgiving as we celebrate the long and amazing life of Earl Wayne Wilkins Jr.
Well, you can't see it.
What's that? We are honored to be able to host you all, whether you're in the church sanctuary here with me, or on Zoom, or watching later on YouTube some other time. We're glad that you're here with us. In our church, we have a saying, no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And that is indeed the case. For those of you who are on Zoom, if we haven't muted you already, we're going to mute you and keep you that way for the rest of the program.
You've muted yourself, Pastor.
Except for those who are speaking, please remain masked and as socially distant as you can possibly remain. COVID has not been our friend. We've had to wait over a year and a half for this celebration of Wilk's life, but we're so glad to be able to do it today. Let us ground ourselves in the spirit with these words from a Buddhist tradition. It is not the end of the world when it is the end of life. It is the beginning of another life into another realm. The best way to honor a relationship is not by despair that it is lost, but to be grateful for what it was worth. It is not the end of a relationship when it is the end of life, but a temporal change in it. We'll understand it better some other time. I imagine Wilkes in the spirit world, free from the trappings of a body and the labors that come with life. Others have imagined such a world. Wayne is now going to lay a song on us about one vision of that other world with Steal Away.
Emotional now. Good morning. Closer. Oh, I can take my mask. Good morning. I'm Wendy Hopkins, the middle Wilkins sibling. We all three, Clint, Wayne, and I, thank you near and far for joining us in celebration and remembrance of our father, known throughout his life variously as Earl, Wayne, Wilk, and here in Williamstown, Doc Wilkins. We want to thank Pastor Mark Seifried, the members of the First Congregational Church, for your support of Wilk and Suki, and for your invaluable assistance culminating in today's service. We want to give a special shout out to Steve Mikulenko and the caregivers and staff at Sweetwood, and also heartfelt thanks to Dad's friends, all of whom supported and took a special care of Dad after Suki died. We're honored today to have as speakers our close family friend, David Dewey, whose father and Wilk roomed together at Williams and were lifelong friends, and Dr. Doug Mathieson, retired surgeon at Mass General Hospital, who worked with Dad in his later years. Thank you both for sharing your memories and celebrating Dad's life with us today. And then we also want to thank the members of the Williams Octet Alumni Group who will be singing later in the program. We are deeply grateful to all of Dad's friends, near and far, and for the community in which our parents were so happy and loved. Thank you all for your abiding friendship. And now I will read from the scripture, 1 Corinthians, the gift of love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful, it is not arrogant or rude, love does not insist on its own way, is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, and the greatest of these is love.
When in doubt, use props. Thank you for being here together today. Such an important moment for so many of us, and I'm so honored to be here with you, both here as well as in Zoom land. Wendy, you and I have sat through many Williams alumni memorial services. We all would rather be up the hill at Thompson Chapel. That's not going to happen today, but quite honestly, I don't think that house is big enough. So, thank you. Good morning and welcome again. Wendy introduced me as David Dewey, probably the fourth child of the Wilkins family, but the Deweys and Wilkins were lifelong friends. And I am so honored to be here today to try to represent 80 years of a love affair that Wayne had with Williams College. It won't take 80 minutes, but I'll try to keep it brief. And at the family's request, my remarks will be focused predominantly on his relationship with college town. Wayne entered Williams in the fall of 1937, majored in chemistry, magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa. He was a deeply devoted son of Kappa Alpha fraternity, his home away from home. He played a few sports, captained football, and was elected permanent class president. Not bad. That was just a 4-year run, and for most of us, that would have been a lifetime. But for Wilk, it was just a nice beginning. Or as a wonderful life, George Bailey would say, I'll go to college and see what they know. And we'll probably hear eloquently from Dr. Mathieson about Wilk's incredible professional career at the other end of Route 2. And we are all better for Wilk's service in the medical field. But I'm here to say that Doc bled purple. Over his 80 years as an alumnus of Williams, our alumni office records a mere 28 committees that Wilk served on. Operative word, serve. He was on 2 presidential search committees, including John Chandler and Frank Oakley, both of whom I'm sure are out there in Zoom land today. And Wilk also earned a few awards while he was at Williams, the Turner Citizenship Prize, the Rogerson Cup for highest award for alumni service. He received a bicentennial medal, the college's highest honor. But truly, he served this college beautifully for 18 years as a trustee. And moving this college through those years was not easy, but Wilk was always there to listen and to lead. Well, beyond the accolades and honors, because Wilk wasn't interested in any of that, I chose to reach out to just a few people that knew Wilk quite well in his capacity serving this college. And I thought I'd share a few of those with us today. My good friend and colleague, Brooks Vail, who is the Secretary for Society of Alumni, captured Wilk this way. Wilk was connected to EIFs across the generations, and they in turn felt connected to Wilk and the college they shared. That's a powerful tribute to Wilk. President Frank Oakley, a wonderful, wonderful man here, still in Williamstown. Wilk reminded us in his judicious, calm, and thoughtful ways about devotion to institution, poignant in today's world. For Wayne, service was reciprocal. It enriches one's life. He showed a willingness to work hard and steadily, and it certainly enriched Wilk's life. From another college, former college president, Wayne always made it clear to me how excited he was about what the college was becoming rather than about what it had been. And then Morty Shapiro captured it pretty well. Nobody more purple, nobody classier and more encouraging. To me, he was Mr. Williams. Before I move forward, I just want to make sure we recognize the legacy that sits among us. Wendy, Clint, and Wayne, you epitomize that service to all. And I know Wilk is with us today. Very proud of the three of you. Now, from a townie perspective, and there's plenty of locals here amongst us, including probably a few down at Tunnel City, zooming in. When Sookie and Wilk moved back here in the 80s, and by the way, we're all going to move back here eventually, so get over that. Wilk just kept going and giving back. He continued his legacy of service in so many different local causes, the Village Ambulance Service. He was president of the Taconic Golf Club. He committed himself to quality health care in Northern Berkshires and has been honored through the Wayne Wilkins Emergency Room over at the former North Adams Hospital. Wilk also paid attention to his college throughout his life, including serving as a mentor to pre-med students. They were trying to figure their way out. Maybe they stayed in medicine and maybe they didn't. But the time that Wilk spent with that cohort is another legacy that none of us appreciate. There's one student in particular that I want to identify, Nathan Timotei. He's a class of 22 and a half, if you can get your head around that. He's a computer science major from Brooklyn, New York. And he served as the first Wilkins Fellow. And I may insert here with pride and humility that the family and the college have created the Wayne Wilkins Community Outreach Fellowship. And it is already doing great work supporting the ambitions of students at Williams as they serve the greater Berkshire community. And if anybody wants to learn more about that way to pay tribute to Wilk, you know where to find me. Here's what Nathan said about Dr. Wilkins. From the moment I heard about him, I was drawn to the ways in which he consistently heeded the calls to service. Like everyone who met him, I was captivated by a charismatic and joyful spirit. He was a treasured member of our Williams family. My sadness at his passing is matched only by my satisfaction that his legacy will live on in our community. I think that pretty much captures Wilk's full circle in the Purple Valley. And finally, I'd just love to share a few personal remembrances from the Dewey clan. As you heard, Dad was roommate, college mate, frat mate, movie-going buddy, golf friend, but lifelong best friend. And that trickled down to my siblings and me. Talked to my brother Morgan yesterday. He and I were beneficiaries of Wilk's generosity. We'd go into Boston every once in a while, put a coat and tie on, dress it up, go to Durgan's Park, and then go watch a Bruins game. And we weren't in the cheap seats. We had to sit near the team physician. So we sat in the loge, which Morgan and I said, "Where's the D?" I thought that word was lodge, but anyhow. Wilk opened up a lot of doors for us, and we may have met a couple of players along the way. Prop number 1, Bobby Orr's hockey stick. My sister Nancy had a great relationship with Wilk. He was never trying to be kind, she says. He was as kind as they come. How Wilk was able to be his humble self, not judge others, be completely present, find beauty and joy, and keep focused and accomplish extraordinary things. He certainly set a high bar for the rest of us. And our daughter Maggie, who played tennis here in Williamstown, if you didn't know this, Wilk was a Cubs sports reporter. When he'd see her down at Tunnel City, he'd grab her by the arm and said, "Nice game yesterday, but work on your overhead." Maggie would say he was always made me feel seen and special just through his curious and compassionate nature. And finally, daughter Sarah, who had quite a love affair with both Sookie and Wilk. She was always curious of how Wilk taught her about how to use your non-dominant hand, just to keep the brain fresh. And she said to be with Wilk was a true joy. And I'm a better person for having known Wilk. All right, to wrap up my own highlight film with Wilk, as I've said, he probably changed my diapers a long time ago, but I'll start in 1966, his 25th reunion, gave me his cap. 1971, the Bobby Orr hockey stick here. I was a patient at Mass General, and just like that, he talked to the man, and it happened. So you can come up here afterwards and touch it if you'd like. On my left, this is not the actual master's jacket, but it's actually the jacket worn by the president of Taconic Golf Club. And both Wilk and my dad wore that with pride, and I thought it should be with us here today. And this will get me hard, but right here, just a few years ago, when your dad was honoring his Sookie. Amazing moment. So in closing, Wilk gave me a prescription for a lot of things in life, but this one is the most important one. He said at the end of each day, before you go to bed, treat yourself to a little ice cream. It just makes everything better. So thank you, Wilk, for showing us all how to live a wonderful life. Go Eefs. I still have the $2 bet that he owed me.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's really a treat to be here and a beautiful day in Williamstown for this special occasion. Before I go too far, I want to thank the Wilkins family for giving me this privilege of being part of this celebration. I wish we had left the picture. I have a lot of pictures of Wilk, but that one has always been my favorite. I could just go take a seat and be done because that picture says everything. So if you haven't seen it, maybe you can figure out a way to see it. It's a wonderful portrait. His true inner self comes out in that picture. But I'm here to talk about something else. I said it'd be easier just to sit down, but I'm here to reflect on his time at the Massachusetts General Hospital. It had such a huge impact during his career. He graduated from Harvard Medical School, AOA, which is the top of the class, the top 5% of the class, kind of like Phi Beta Kappa. And after graduation, he joined the surgical staff, the resident staff at Mass General from 1944 to 1951. During that time, he came under the influence of Dr. Richard Sweet, a pioneer in thoracic surgery, one of the most gifted and productive thoracic surgeons, and is still revered in the halls of Mass General today. And Dr. Wilkins was smitten by him. He followed in his footsteps. He became his mentor, teacher, and good friend. Dr. Wilkins was then asked to join the staff in 1952 and as Dr. Sweet's associate, quite an honor. Dr. Sweet's specialty was esophageal surgery, and Dr. Wilkins learned from the master. Wilk was also a master surgeon, gifted, but learned a lot from his time with Dr. Sweet. He also became known for his expertise in esophageal surgery, as was his mentor, Richard Sweet. Dr. Wilkins published many articles, many of which became classics and are still classics today. Esophageal surgery has always been amongst the most demanding operations in surgery, and Dr. Wilkins had an impeccable record. The measure of success for someone who does esophageal surgery is putting the esophagus and the stomach back together in such a way that it won't leak. It requires tremendous attention to detail, meticulous technique, and not making any shortcuts, not taking any shortcuts. Or as he would often say, do it till it's right. And that philosophy permeated our relationship when I was a resident. In his 40-year career, he never had an anastomotic leak. An incredible record then, even today, incredible record. He was a founding member of the MGH Thoracic Surgical Service. At that time, thought to be amongst the finest units in the country. He helped develop the first postgraduate course in thoracic surgery in 1970 in North America. He was instrumental in the first dedicated general thoracic surgery residency, which didn't exist until Dr. Wilkins and colleagues put their heads together and came up with that notion. Because of these accomplishments, he became a professor of surgery at the Harvard Medical School in 1970. In addition to his duties as a thoracic surgeon, Dr. Wilkins was the head of emergency services at the Massachusetts General Hospital and was the editor of the MGH textbook in emergency medicine. He introduced many new concepts and introduced med flights to transport injured patients to the hospital after trauma events, now more widely used for other reasons to get people transported to the hospital. For these contributions, he was recognized by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with the Commonwealth Award, the highest civic award given by Massachusetts. Because of his many contributions and the number of individuals that he impacted during his tenure as a thoracic surgeon, the Earl Wilkins Visiting Professorship was established in 1998 in his honor. It's now in its 25th year and has had the good fortune of having all of the leaders in thoracic surgery as Wilkins Visiting Professors. This two-day event is the highlight of the academic calendar for the Thoracic Surgery Service at Massachusetts Hospital. Well, you can see that Dr. Wilkins left his mark at MGH, but where he really left his mark was on the cardiothoracic residents he trained. There's a quote by Theodore Coker, a famous 19th century surgeon, and I quote, "The greatest mark a surgeon can make is to inspire others to follow in his footsteps." Dr. Wilkins certainly succeeded in that regard. Many followed in his footsteps by his inspiration. It is said that those who train surgical residents are like giant oak trees, acorns dropping to the ground, growing to be giant oak trees themselves, or surgeons, as the case may be. In a minute, you will hear from some of these surgeons he trained who have gone on to be giant oak trees surgeons. Because of this, training residents, the impact a surgeon has is exponentially spread by their trainees, impacting many patients through their activities and the things that they learn from their mentors. I contacted a number of former residents for comments and their reflection about working with Dr. Wilkins. I had to sort through, I got a lot of responses, and each one had a little something special in it, which is why I chose them. I think if you hear these, you'll get a sense of the impact and the high regard that Dr. Wilkins had on these individuals. And I quote, "He was a superb surgical and professional mentor, always polite, kind to his residents, and generous with his surgical teaching. He was a great ambassador for the MGH. James Kirkland, Chief of Cardiac Surgery at the University. Wilk had an inherent dignity about him. I imagine he would be a really great friend if the circumstances permitted. Bruce Lytle, Chief of Cardiac Surgery. I remember him with fondness and respect. I greatly respected my father, but if I couldn't have my own father, I would want Wilk to be my father. That one touched me. Marshall Jacobs, congenital heart surgeon, Johns Hopkins Hospital. Wilk always seemed so calm. He inspired me to learn everything that I could, because someday a patient's life may depend upon it. Mark Allen, chief of thoracic surgery, the Mayo Clinic. He always seemed interested in what you had to say. He was a role model of how to be a great surgeon with grace, humility, the highest standard of care. Doug Wood, chief of surgery, University of Washington. My own personal reflections would be very similar to the ones I've just read. Dr. Wilkins and other thoracic surgeons were why I went into thoracic. They were great surgeons, passionate about thoracic surgery, and blessed with impeccable personal qualities. In short, I wanted to be like them. Equally important, as you've heard, Dr. Wilkins showed all of us how to retire well. This was also a very important lesson to share with the residents. He would come back to the Wilkins visiting professorship on a very regular basis. He retired at the peak of his surgical skills, in my opinion. I worked with him at the age of 66. He then spent 35 years in retirement, almost as long as his surgical career. As you heard, he returned to Williamstown. He became very involved in the college and the community, satisfying one of the two things that he mentioned as being so important for retirement, one of the two. But he always stressed that the secret to successful retirement was being mentally active here in Williamstown and with the college, and physically fit. This was best summed up when he returned for one of the Wilkins visiting professorships and was asked by one of our young residents, Dr. Wilkins, you look great. What's your secret? I was there when this question was asked. He paused and then replied, well, this year it was half-court basketball, and I was the youngest guy on the court. He said that he and his friends in Williamstown tried a new sport every year just to keep themselves active and engaged. Thus, even in retirement. Dr. Wilkins impacted many during his outstanding surgical career and will be missed greatly. His memory will live on in the hearts and minds of those individuals who were inspired by him, had the good fortune to work with him and know him. Most importantly, all of the patients that he impacted indirectly or directly. That's early.
Good morning to the few of you in this sanctuary and to the many of you out there in the world of Zoom. I'm Clint Wilkins. I'm the oldest of my mom and dad's children and the one from California. What a spectacular life we're finally getting to celebrate after being cooped up for so long. Most of you know quite a bit about our father, and certainly quite a bit more from our two wonderful speakers this morning. Today, I'm going to share with you another side or two of our father, just as remarkable, if not more so. It's what my sister Wendy, my brother Wayne, and I experienced as children growing up and later in his retirement years. Let's start near the beginning. If you could thumb through the yearbook at the Albany Academy in his senior year, you'd get a pretty accurate snapshot of what was to come. He was on nearly every page, a budding legend in his own time. His friends noted that he had no familiarity with that rubbery thing at the other end of a pencil. And his classmate and lifelong friend, Andy Rooney, said, Wayne must have done something wrong somewhere, but we can never find out. So by the time he reached the Williams College campus in 1937, he had already hit his stride. But it wasn't always so. He didn't walk until he was 2. And for a time, he found high school to be quite challenging. That is, until the middle of 10th grade. That's when I figured it out, he told me. And I owe it all to my mother, a Latin teacher, who tutored me every day after school for 3 years until I got it right. That marked perhaps the turning point in his life. When we kids were young, we didn't see much of him during the week. He would leave early for the hospital and come home pretty late. But we kids did see a lot of him on school vacations and in the summertime. I remember most of all the road trips we took in our two-toned 1957 Plymouth station wagon with real tail fins. He behind the steering wheel and we three in the back seat and our mom riding shotgun. From this commanding perch as quiz master, he taught us mathematical formulas and shortcuts. All the while, he presided over never-ending rounds of 20 questions. He taught us mathematical formulas and shortcuts, all the while on the lookout for the license plates for all 48 states. These activities were pure play, but with a clear sense of purpose, to use our minds well, to develop our problem-solving skills and our powers of observation. At mid-career, he took a sabbatical leave from the Mass General Hospital to go to Vienna as a visiting surgeon. He also took on another role, cruise director for my mom, Wendy, and Wayne. On weekends, exploring Austria, appreciating the arts, hiking, skiing, Mozart and Mahler. And the summers to what amounted to a couple of grand tours of the continent. By the time they had returned stateside, Dad had become a Renaissance man. Foundation for my own relationship with my dad was sports. That was our language. Early on, we developed a lifelong habit of glossing over the front pages of the daily newspaper in favor of the sports section. Paraphrase Chief Justice Earl Warren, we would go short on human frailty and long on human accomplishment. Through sports, he taught me nearly everything I needed to know to find my way in life. Value of fair play, how to think strategically, and to accept failure as an opportunity. But what struck me most was his fascination for those athletes who could transcend the limits of their sport, and by extension, those individuals who achieved excellence, whatever the field. Our mutual addiction to sports would only grow well into the last 3.5 decades of his life, all of which he spent, as you know, in this very stimulating college town. By this time, however, we would connect on much more. And being the Renaissance man that he'd become, we would toggle from one subject to the next. Among the most precious moments were our routines: a leisurely breakfast, running an errand, out to dinner, or a long drive to Cape Cod back. It was another physician, Dr. Oliver Sacks, who described his own retirement years as a time of leisure and freedom, free to explore whatever I wish and to bind the thoughts and feelings of a lifetime together. To bind the thoughts and feelings of a lifetime together. Boy, did we have a lot of that. It was a movable feast. First for me and my siblings, our spouses and our mom, and then with our growing families of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. A few moments stand out for me during these retirement years. Dad often spoke of those individuals in his own life who had made their mark on him, usually a coach or his own mentor in thoracic surgery, Dr. William Sweet. I have a vivid recollection. I must have been 8 or 9 at the time. It was early one Saturday morning, and Dad was brimming with anticipation, for he was about to visit with his coach at Williams, his football coach, Charlie Caldwell. Charlie Caldwell had moved on to Princeton. That event just stuck with me. I have no reason to know why, but it left me curious. So a few years ago, I asked my dad, "What did you talk about with Charlie Caldwell that morning before that football game?" Careers, life decisions, dilemmas? He turned to me with that penetrating look of his, surprised I would even ask. "Nope," he said, "just X's and O's." No, just X's and O's. Really? Well, that was a bit deflating, for I had hoped for more. But that's precisely the point. Figuring out stuff and then its execution. That was his approach to most everything in life. And more than that, figuring out complex stuff and the execution at the highest levels. Nothing more, nothing less. And what about your relationship with Dr. Sweet, your mentor in thoracic surgery, I asked. His response, "It's what he didn't need to say that mattered most." As a child, I would marvel at his uncanny ability to take on a leadership role in nearly everything he did. How did he become, voila, president of his class in college, captain of the football team, chief resident in surgery? It seemed to me then as a young boy, even now, that he possessed magical powers. And when I asked him recently, "So what was the secret sauce, Dad?" He gave me that same penetrating look and offered up only a few morsels: honesty, integrity, self-discipline, trust, all in the service of others. While these values formed his moral core, it was his mind that it really intrigued me the most. It was a steel trap, incisive and quick. As children, we learned early on that we were no match. So it was nearly impossible to put anything past him. So early on, we just gave up. Those of you who played golf with him would marvel at his photographic memory. Back in the clubhouse after a round, he could recite every shot by each player on every hole. He was data-driven long before it became a thing. Ever the empiricist, he took his own pulse the first thing every morning. And he kept a little notebook in his car, recording the date and the mileage each time he filled up the tank, just because. He was a scientist with a bedside manner, and not just any old bedside manner, and not just with his patients. He found great pleasure in connecting with people, all sorts of people, whatever their station in life. And when he did, he exuded an infectious energy. He even knew the name of the toll booth collectors on the Mass Pike way back when in his West Newton days. A fleeting daily transaction. Good morning, Jack. Have a good day, Doc. The same kind of ritual would play out over and over and over again, especially here along Spring Street in Williamstown, and indeed wherever you might find him. But it was another quality, his passion, that drove him to squeeze the most out of life. He cried openly when JFK died. He was the fiercest of competitors. And boy, did he hate to lose. On occasion, he could get really loud, mainly at athletic events, where he usually had a better grasp of the rule book than the refs. And when they would blow a call, he would ride them mercilessly. Then again, he could get unusually quiet, especially when his beloved New York football Giants would blow yet another lead, and we might not see him for hours on end. I remember well a comment from one of his surgeon colleagues at his own retirement ceremony many years ago in Boston. Dr. Wilkins, he said, had a lover's quarrel with the Mass General Hospital. He did indeed have a lover's quarrel with other doctors, especially those who would care for him in his old age, and a lifelong quarrel with the practice of medicine itself. But he had very few quarrels in his 83-year relationship with Williams College, and no quarrel at all, it seemed, with any of his many friends. I would be seriously remiss if I didn't celebrate perhaps his most public trait, his presence, his magnetic presence. Whether it was at a board meeting in the operating room or just chatting with friends, it didn't seem to matter. He was totally there, fully engaged, living in the here and now. It seemed he was always focused, absorbed, and energized all at once, in that mental state that psychologists call flow. Many of us mere mortals need to work at being present. He just had it. It came naturally. And when you were with him, you too would find yourself more present. He was a Zen master who hadn't attended a single retreat. If I were given only one word describe our Father, it would be this: awake. And finally, there was his love, a love that was like most everything else in his life, passionate, enthusiastic, and present all at once. We family members bathed in his unconditional love. And of course, we marveled at his 75-year love affair with our mom. They were inseparable. Seldom would you find one without the other. Wherever they went and whatever they did, they brought with them an unspoken aura. Picture this: Sookie and Wilk at their favorite Williamstown hangout, Tunnel City Coffee, sitting side by side at a table with friends and greeting passersby, nursing one latte. Yes, one latte. Dad would take the first sips while it was hot, and then it was Mom's turn, and she would linger over it. Now that's an image to savor. His love was her love. Her love was his. It knew no bounds. And it was his enduring love for her that could light up his whole being in the months after Sookie had passed on to what she routinely called the other side. He would gaze longingly at her picture and then look up to the heavens, a trace of a tear or two settling onto his cheeks, words for once eluding him. Words would not elude my siblings and me, however, when it came to capturing what would be etched onto their headstone in the Williams College Cemetery. With no prompting, it came to us almost in unison. Their love for each other brought out the best in us all.
Thank you, Clint. To honor a Zen master, we should be quiet. And to be a student of a Zen master, we should focus on the now. Grateful for this time of remembrance, grateful for the gathering of family and friends, grateful for the technology that allows people from far to be with us, and even grateful for YouTube that will be able to revisit this service in the future. Let us give thanks in our quiet and good way. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him. When we have a joy we crave to share, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, when we have achievements that are based on his, we remember him. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, at the opening of the buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember him. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, at the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember him. At the rising of the sun and at its setting, we remember him. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now part of us as we remember him. On behalf of the family, again, I want to thank everyone for being here. This afternoon, all who are in Williamstown or nearby are invited to join the family at the Williams College Cemetery. Clint says that it will be Quaker style in that if those who gather feel so moved to share a memory or a story or an image of Wilk, they're invited to do so. And then all are invited to join the family at the Williams College Faculty Club at 5:30. We are now blessed with members of the Williams Octet who will sing "'Neath the Shadow of the Hills." Thank you for filling our bosoms. Go with this blessing. May the sun bring you energy every day, bringing light into the darkness of your soul. May the moon softly restore you by light bathing you in the glow of restful sleep and peaceful dreams. May the rain wash away your worries and cleanse the hurt that sits in your heart. May the breeze blow new strength into your being, and may you believe in the courage of yourself. May you walk gently through the world, keeping your loved ones with you always, knowing that you are never parted in the beating of your hearts. Go in peace. Amen.